Mark stood in the center of the Veldorian palace, surrounded by the alien leaders. His mission had been clear from the start: negotiate a peace treaty between humans and the Veldorians. But things were far from simple. The Veldorians were known for their beauty and power, but they were also secretive and proud. Trust was not easily earned. Alara, the youngest and most powerful of the Veldorian royal family, had been assigned to lead the negotiations. She was graceful, with silver skin that shimmered in the light, and her violet eyes seemed to pierce through the room. Mark had heard stories of the Veldorian strength, but standing in her presence, he felt a strange sense of unease. Human, Alara's voice was sharp, her tone carrying an air of authority. You claim to come in peace, yet you expect us to trust you. What proof do you offer that your people won't betray us like others before? Mark's heart raced. He had anticipated the distrust, but the weight of her gaze made him feel vulnerable. I have nothing to offer but honesty, he said, trying to sound confident. We need to find common ground or risk war. I want peace. Alara's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, her presence imposing. Peace, you humans speak of it, yet you bring destruction wherever you go. What makes you different? Mark couldn't deny the truth of her words. He had seen the destruction in his own world. Humans have made mistakes, but he believed they could change. He just had to prove it to her. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the building. Mark's heart skipped a beat as the ground beneath them trembled. The Veldorians' advanced security systems had detected something, a threat. Panic spread throughout the room, and guards rushed past Mark, their faces set in grim determination. Stay here, Alara commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. I will handle this. Mark watched as she moved with swift grace, her energy almost otherworldly. He had never seen anyone move like that before. It was as if she was more than human, more than anything he could comprehend. As the sounds of battle echoed in the distance, Mark stood alone in the palace's grand hall, his mind racing. He couldn't let this mission fail. The stakes were too high. Peace was the only option. Moments later, Alara returned, her silver skin marked with traces of dust, but her composure unchanged. The threat has been dealt with, she said, her voice steady. But you, human, will stay with me. It is not safe here. Mark nodded, following her through the palace's winding corridors. His thoughts were consumed with what had just happened. He had come to Veldoria to negotiate peace, but now, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Alara led him to a small chamber at the edge of the palace. She motioned for him to sit. We have much to discuss, she said, her voice calmer now. You humans are strange. Your kind claims to be the future of the galaxy, yet you are so fragile. You fear what you do not understand. Mark couldn't help but feel defensive. We've made our mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't do better. We can learn from our past and build a future that's different. Alara regarded him silently, then spoke softly, perhaps. But you need to understand one thing. There are consequences to your actions. You may think you are here to save us, but you are already changing everything. Mark frowned. Confused. What do you mean? Before Alara could respond, there was a sudden sharp pain in Mark's chest. It was as if something inside him was pulling at his very soul. His body trembled, and he felt his vision blur. He clutched his chest, his breath coming in short gasps. Alara's eyes widened in alarm. Mark, what is happening to you? She cried, rushing to his side. Mark couldn't answer. The pain intensified, and then, without warning, he collapsed to the floor. His world spun around him as the darkness closed in. But as he fell, something strange happened. He felt the pull of Alara's presence, and the next thing he knew, her blood was on his lips. He had no choice. His body had acted on its own as he drank. Something surged inside him, a wave of power, of energy. Memories that weren't his began to flood his mind. He saw glimpses of Alara's past, her people, their struggles, and their powerful history. The visions were overwhelming, and his body responded as if it were being transformed. His muscles burned with a newfound strength, and his senses sharpened to a degree he could never have imagined. When the flood of images stopped, Mark pulled away from Alara, gasping for breath. His heart pounded in his chest, but the pain was gone. Instead, he felt different, stronger, more aware of everything around him. Alara looked at him, her face a mix of fear and disbelief. "You drank my blood." Mark could barely find his voice. "I didn't mean to, but I felt something. It's like I can feel what you feel. I saw things, your memories." Alara's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and fear. "You've made a grave mistake. Human, my blood is not to be taken lightly." Mark didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. Mark's head spun as he tried to stand, his body still trembling from the strange experience. His hands shook, but the power he felt coursing through him was undeniable. It was as if the very core of his being had been changed. The world around him seemed clearer, sharper, and he could hear the faintest sounds, like the distant flutter of wings or the hum of energy running through the palace walls. Alara stood across from him, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Her voice was cold as she spoke. "You shouldn't have done that, human. You don't understand the consequences." Mark wiped his mouth, still trying to grasp what had happened. "What did I just do? Why did I feel everything? Your memories, your emotions, they were so real." Alara's eyes flickered with something between fear and anger. "My blood holds more than just life, Mark. It holds the history of my people. The past, the pain, and the power. It's not for the likes of you to take. But now it's too late." Mark felt a tightness in his chest, as though something deep within him was waking up. "What do you mean? What's going to happen to me?" "You've bound yourself to my blood," Alara said softly. "That's not something that can be undone. The Vildorians have lived with this bond for centuries. Only a few humans have ever survived it, and those who did, well, they became something more than human." Mark's heart raced. "What do you mean, more than human?" Alara stepped closer, her voice quieter now, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "The Vildorians are not like other species in the galaxy. Our blood is what keeps us connected to our ancestors, to the energy of the universe. When you drank it, you didn't just take my strength, you took a piece of everything that came before me." Mark could feel his pulse quickening. He had always known humans were capable of great things, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. "But why me?" Mark asked, struggling to make sense of it all. "Why did my body react like this? Why not any other human?" Alara looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Perhaps it's because you are different. You were chosen without knowing it. My people have searched for someone like you, someone who could survive the bond and unlock what we have kept hidden for so long." Mark felt a chill run through him. "What's hidden? What do you mean?" Before Alara could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hallway. Mark tensed, his new senses alert to every detail around him. Alara raised a hand, signaling him to remain silent. The door to the chamber burst open, and a group of Vildorian soldiers stormed in, their weapons drawn. They were tall, with sleek armor that reflected the dim light of the room. Mark instinctively stood between them and Alara, his body ready for action. The soldiers' eyes locked onto him, filled with suspicion. "Princess Alara," one of them said, his voice stern. "We've detected an unauthorized energy surge. What is going on here?" Alara's expression remained calm, though her eyes flickered toward Mark. "This human has changed," she said, her voice steady. "He's been exposed to the ancient bloodline." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, but none of them moved. Mark could feel the tension thickening in the room. It was as if they didn't know whether to treat him as an ally or a threat. "You know the rules, Princess." Another soldier spoke up. "No outsider is allowed to connect with our blood. This could mean war." Alara's eyes narrowed. "And what do you suggest we do, Commander? Kill him?" The soldiers shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. They all knew the risk of harming a human who had been bound to the Vildorian bloodline. It could lead to a far greater threat than they were prepared for. Mark's heart raced. He had no idea what to do. All he knew was that he couldn't let things spiral out of control. The peace mission was already on the edge, and now With his connection to Alara's blood, things were even more complicated. "You have no choice," Mark said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to find a way to fix this, not make it worse. The blood, it changed me, but I don't know how to control it yet. I need help." Alara studied him for a long moment, before nodding slowly. "You're right, the situation is beyond us now." The soldiers exchanged looks of disbelief, but they respected their princess enough to remain silent. Alara turned to the commander. "Take him to the elders. They will decide what must be done." Mark was led out of the chamber, his mind racing with questions as they walked through the grand halls of the palace. He could feel the weight of what had just happened. The power inside him was still strange, foreign, but there was something else, too. Something that made him feel more alive than he ever had before. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. His life was no longer just his own, and whatever happened next, he would have to face it head on. Mark sat in the dark chamber, the cold stone walls closing in around him. He had been led here by the Veldorian soldiers, his hands bound to prevent any sudden movement. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion, trying to process everything that had happened. He had never imagined that a simple diplomatic mission would turn into a life-altering event. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. Alara appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Behind her, a group of elderly Veldorians entered, their robes flowing as they moved with a slow, deliberate grace. They were the elders, the most respected and wise members of Veldorian society. Mark could feel the weight of their gazes as they studied him, sizing him up. Alara stood beside him, her presence calming, though the tension in the room was thick. "Elders," she began, her voice steady, "this human Mark has been exposed to the bloodline. He has taken a piece of our past and, in doing so, has become something different. I am not sure what this means for him or for us." The elders looked at each other in silence, exchanging glances that Mark couldn't read. Finally, one of them, a tall Veldorian with silver hair, spoke. "You have done what no one has done before. Human, you have merged with our blood, and for that, you must face the consequences." Mark's stomach twisted with fear. "What consequences? What's happening to me?" The elder turned to him, his gaze piercing. "The bloodline you have consumed is not just a part of us, it is part of our power. And with that power comes responsibility. You are no longer just a human. You are now tied to the fate of our people." Mark blinked, his heart racing. "What do you mean? I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to help." Alara placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a comforting touch. "I know, Mark, but you can't undo what has already been done. The blood has changed you in ways I don't fully understand. We need to find a way to control it." The elder stepped closer, his voice cold and stern. "The Veldorian bloodline is sacred. It has been passed down through generations. To bind a human to it is not something to be taken lightly. You must prove that you can handle the power you now hold." Mark swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "How can I prove it? I don't even know what this power is." Another elder, a shorter woman with sharp green eyes, spoke up. "You must learn to control the energy within you. It is not just physical strength, but a deeper power that connects you to the very essence of Veldoria. You will need training, and you will need guidance." Alara nodded. "We can help you, Mark, but you must be willing to face what comes next. The power inside you is dangerous if left unchecked." Mark looked at Alara, his mind racing. He didn't ask for any of this, but he couldn't ignore the strange connection he felt to her and to the Veldorians. It was like something had awakened inside him, something that was both terrifying and exhilarating. He didn't know if he could control it, but he had no choice but to try. "I'll do whatever it takes," Mark said, his voice steady. "I want to understand this power. I want to help you." Alara's eyes softened, and for the first time, Mark saw a flicker of hope in her gaze. "We'll start your training tomorrow. But be warned, this will not be easy. The power inside you will test your limits. If you fail, the consequences could be disastrous." Mark nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face whatever came next. The elders left the chamber, leaving Mark and Alara alone. Mark rubbed his temples, trying to clear his thoughts. He was exhausted, both physically and mentally, from everything that had happened. Alara remained silent for a moment before speaking again. "You'll need to be prepared, Mark," she said softly. "The Veldorian bloodline is not something to be taken lightly. It has the power to destroy, but it also has the power to heal. You will need to learn to control it before it controls you." Mark looked up at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "How do I control something like this? How can I even begin to understand what I'm going through?" Alara smiled faintly, her voice gentle. "One step at a time. We'll train together. I'll help you. But remember this, Mark, you are not alone in this. You may have taken my blood, but you have also taken the responsibility that comes with it. We will face this together." Mark nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. Alara's words gave him hope. He didn't know if he could control the power within him, but for the first time since the strange surge had started, he felt like he had a chance. As he looked at Alara, he knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same again. And whether he was ready or not, he was about to embark on a journey that would change the course of history. The sun had barely risen when Mark stepped into the training grounds. His mind was still reeling from everything he had learned. Alara had promised to help him control the power inside him, but Mark had no idea what to expect. All he knew was that the strange surge of energy that had taken over him wasn't going away. If anything, it felt stronger. The training area was vast, surrounded by high stone walls, with a floor covered in soft moss that cushioned every step. It was quiet here, away from the noise and chaos of the palace. Mark could see Alara standing at the far side, her posture straight, her eyes focused. "Are you ready?" Alara asked without turning to face him. Mark nodded, trying to calm his nerves. "I'm ready." Alara turned and gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Good. The first step is to learn to focus. The blood inside you is connected to everything: the land, the sky, the people of Veldoria. But you must learn to hear it, feel it, and control it." Mark swallowed, looking at her. "I don't understand. How can I control something like that?" "You will," she said simply. "But first, you must quiet your mind. The power you have is chaotic. It flows through you without direction. You need to learn how to focus that energy." Mark took a deep breath, trying to follow her instructions. He closed his eyes and focused on the air around him, the soft rustling of the leaves in the wind. The sound of his own breath seemed to fill the silence. For a moment, he felt calm. But then, just as quickly, his mind was filled with the images and memories of the visions he had experienced, the flood of emotions, of people he had never met, all of it crashing down on him at once. He gasped, staggering back. "I can't, it's too much," Mark said, his voice tight with frustration. Alara approached him, her eyes kind but firm. "That's the chaos I'm talking about. It's not just the power that's overwhelming, it's the emotions, the history, the lives that are now a part of you. You must learn to control not only the power, but also the memories, the feelings that come with it." Mark closed his eyes again, willing himself to calm down. This time, he focused on something simpler: the feel of the wind on his skin, the sound of birds singing in the trees, the soft earth beneath his feet. Slowly, he felt the energy inside him settle, like a storm that had finally calmed. He could still feel it, the power, but it was no longer overwhelming. Alara watched him quietly. "Better," she said, nodding. "But this is only the beginning. Now, we will test your ability to control the energy." She motioned to a small boulder a few paces away. "Lift that stone." Mark looked at the rock, unsure. "I don't think I can. It's too heavy." Alara's gaze was unwavering. "You can. The power inside you is not limited by the body's strength. It's connected to the very energy of Veldoria. You just have to tap into it." Mark took a deep breath. He closed his eyes again and focused on the boulder. For a moment, nothing happened. He felt the energy swirling within him, but it was like trying to catch the wind. Then, slowly, a flicker of movement. The boulder lifted an inch, then two. hovering in the air before dropping back to the ground with a thud. Mark's heart raced. I did it, but just barely. Alara nodded. Good, but don't get comfortable. This is only a small test. You must learn to control the energy with precision. If you can't, it will control you. Mark clenched his fists. How do I make it stronger? How do I make it last? By focusing, Alara said. By knowing what you want and keeping your mind clear of everything else. Let the energy flow, but don't let it take over. Mark tried again, focusing harder this time. His hand stretched out toward the boulder, and with all the strength he could summon, he imagined the rock rising higher. The power within him responded, and the boulder floated once more, this time higher and higher, until it hovered above his head. Alara watched him closely. You're getting there. But remember, don't force it. Let it come naturally. Mark gritted his teeth, trying to keep control. His arm shook from the effort, but the stone remained suspended in the air. Slowly, he lowered it back to the ground, his breath coming in short gasps. Alara stepped forward, her expression softening. Well done, Mark. That was better than I expected. Mark smiled weakly, feeling drained. It's still not easy. I can feel the power inside me, but I don't know how to control it all the time. You will, Alara said, her voice gentle. It takes time, but I know you have the strength to do it. Mark nodded, grateful for her support, but deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning. He was only starting to understand the power that had been forced upon him, and as he trained, he could feel the weight of his responsibility growing heavier. The more he learned, the more he realized that this power was not just about strength. It was about understanding, control, and knowing when to let go. He couldn't rely on it blindly. He had to be careful. The stakes were to high. As the day wore on, Mark continued his training, the sweat on his brow a testament to the effort it took. Alara stood nearby, watching him carefully, offering advice when needed. It was clear that she believed in him. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that there was still much more to learn. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark knew that he was far from ready. But he was determined. He would learn, for the sake of peace and for the future of the galaxy. He had to control this power. The days had passed quickly since Mark began his training with Alara. Every day was filled with physical and mental challenges, and though Mark had made progress, he knew he was far from mastering the power within him. His connection to the Veldorian bloodline was still a mystery, and the more he trained, the more he realized just how deep this bond ran. Alara had taught him to focus, to control the energy within his body, but she had also warned him about the dangers of using this power recklessly. You can't rush it, Mark, she had told him repeatedly. The power you hold is ancient. It will not be tamed quickly. But Mark wasn't one to give up easily. Every day, he practiced harder, his body growing stronger, his mind sharper. The world around him seemed to respond to his presence now. He could feel the earth beneath him, the air around him, and the pulse of energy running through the land. It was as though the very planet was alive, and he was a part of it today. Mark stood at the edge of the training grounds, looking out over the vast Veldorian landscape. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the rolling hills and towering mountains. It was beautiful, peaceful even. But there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. Mark could feel it. Mark, Alara's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see her approaching, her face set with determination. We need to talk. Mark nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. What's wrong? Alara looked around, making sure no one else was near. There are rumors. Some of the factions within the Veldorian Council are growing nervous about you. They fear the power you've unlocked, and they fear what it means for their future. Mark's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What are they planning? Alara's eyes darkened. There are whispers of rebellion. Some want to use your power for their own gain. Others believe you should be eliminated before you can cause any more harm. Mark clenched his fists. They want to kill me. Alara nodded. It's possible. You're a threat to them, Mark, not just because of the power you hold, but because of what you represent. You're the human who survived the bloodline. You're the symbol of change, and not everyone is ready for that, Mark. felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had come to Veldoria with the hope of building peace, but now, it seemed that the very people he had trusted might be turning against him. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. "What do we do?" Mark asked, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "We need to find a way to prove that you're not a threat," Alara said, her voice firm. "We need to show them that you can control the power you hold. If we don't, they'll take matters into their own hands." Mark nodded, determination flooding through him. "Then let's prove it. I'll show them that I'm not dangerous." Alara smiled slightly, a look of pride in her eyes. "That's the spirit." Over the next few days, Mark and Alara worked together to prepare for the council meeting. They spent hours in the training grounds, pushing Mark to his limits, honing his control over the energy inside him. Alara taught him how to focus his power without letting it consume him, how to use it for good instead of destruction. As Mark's training progressed, he began to feel more in control. The visions that had once overwhelmed him were now easier to manage. He could channel the memories of the Veldorian ancestors without losing himself in them. The power that had once felt like a storm inside him was now like a calm river, flowing steadily under his control. The day of the council meeting arrived, and Mark stood beside Alara in the grand hall, facing the members of the Veldorian Council. The room was filled with tension, the air thick with uncertainty. The council members sat in their high seats, their eyes fixed on Mark, each one weighing him in their own way. Alara stepped forward, addressing the council. "Honorable members, I stand before you today with Mark, a human who has been bound to the Veldorian bloodline. He has trained tirelessly to prove that he can control the power within him. Today, we will show you that he is not a threat." One of the council members, a tall Veldorian with piercing blue eyes, stood up. "You ask us to trust him, Princess, a human who has drunk from our blood. You have lost your mind." Mark's heart raced, but he stood tall. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I never did. I just want to help. I want to prove that we can work together." The council members sneered. "Prove it, then. Show us your power, human." Alara gave Mark a silent nod of encouragement. Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward. He reached out, focusing on the energy inside him. Feeling it surge through his veins, he closed his eyes, letting the power flow through him, guiding it with every thought, every breath. The room fell silent as Mark raised his hand, slowly. A small boulder on the far side of the room began to rise into the air. The energy was steady now, controlled, as Mark lifted it higher, then lowered it gently back to the ground. The council members watched in stunned silence. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. As he opened his eyes, he could feel their gaze upon him, each one waiting for something more. "I've learned to control it," Mark said, his voice steady. "This power doesn't control me anymore. I control it." Alara stepped forward, standing beside him. "This is what we offer: peace, cooperation, and the chance for something new. We can't undo the past, but we can change the future." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the council members nodded. The tension in the room slowly began to lift. Mark exhaled in relief, his body sagging with exhaustion. He had proven himself, but this was just the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead, but for the first time, he felt that he might be able to face them. Mark woke up early, the cool morning air flowing through the window of his room. The events of the previous day played over in his mind. The council had finally seen his power, and he had proven that he could control it. For the first time since his arrival in Veldoria, he felt like there might be a chance for peace. But that peace was fragile. He could feel the tension still simmering beneath the surface. There were those in the council who didn't trust him, who still saw him as a danger to their way of life. It would take more than just a display of power to change their minds. Mark stood up, stretching his arms, and walked to the window. Outside, the palace grounds were quiet, bathed in the soft light of dawn. He could hear the distant sound of birds calling and the wind rustling through the trees. Veldoria was beautiful, a place unlike any he had ever known. But it was also a place on the edge of conflict. If he didn't succeed in winning their trust, everything could fall apart. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Alara stepped in, her expression calm but serious. "It's time," she said simply. "The council wants to see you." Mark nodded, his stomach tightening with nerves. He had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of it all felt heavier than ever. Today's meeting could determine whether or not he was accepted or if he would be cast aside. As a threat, he followed Alara through the corridors of the palace, his mind racing. He had done everything he could to prove himself, but the council's mistrust still lingered, even after his display of power. He knew that some of them were waiting for him to slip up, to make a mistake that would confirm their fears. As they entered the council chamber, Mark's eyes were drawn to the rows of high seats where the council members sat. The room was filled with an air of expectation, and the members were watching him closely. Their gazes were hard to read, but Mark could feel the weight of their judgment. Alara stepped forward, addressing the council. "We are here today to discuss the future. Mark has shown his ability to control the power he now holds. He has proven that he is not a threat. We must decide whether we will allow him to help us, or if we will continue to turn away from the possibility of peace." The council members exchanged glances, their faces unreadable. One of them, a tall man with dark hair and sharp features, stood up. "You ask us to trust a human, a creature who has only just begun to understand the power he holds. Can we truly believe that he will not turn this power against us when the time comes?" Mark felt a surge of frustration. He had already proven himself, but it seemed like they still didn't trust him. "I'm not here to harm you," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm here because I believe we can work together. I understand that you're scared, but I'm not your enemy." Another council member, a woman with long silver hair, spoke next. "It's not just about fear, human. It's about what your presence means. You are a symbol of change, and change can be dangerous. If we accept you, we risk upsetting everything that we have built." Mark took a step forward, his eyes meeting hers. "Change is scary, I know, but it's also necessary. We can either continue fighting, or we can find a way to work together. I'm offering you a chance at peace, not war." The room fell silent as the council members exchanged more glances. Mark could feel the tension rising. It seemed like no one was ready to make a decision. Alara, standing beside him, looked at him with a quiet understanding. She knew how much this moment meant to him. Finally, the same tall council member who had spoken earlier stood up again. "You may have shown that you are not a threat, human, but there is one final test. You will face the Veldorian trials." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "The trials? What are those?" The council member looked at him with a mix of respect and challenge. "The Veldorian trials are a test of strength, wisdom, and control. If you pass, you will prove that you are worthy of our trust. If you fail, well, we will have no choice but to consider you a danger to our people." Mark took a deep breath. The trials were something no one could take lightly. He had heard rumors of the trials, but no one ever spoke of them in detail. It was said that only the strongest, the most skilled, could survive them. But Mark didn't have a choice. If he wanted to prove himself, he had to face whatever came. Next, Alara stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with resolve. "We accept the challenge," she said, her eyes meeting Mark's. "We will face the trials together." Mark nodded, grateful for her support. "I'm ready." The council members watched them silently as the decision was made. The trials would begin at sunrise the next day. Mark knew that he had little time to prepare, but there was no turning back now. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to give up. As they left the chamber, Alara turned to Mark. "The trials will be difficult, but you are not alone in this. I will help you every step of the way." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of determination settle within him. "Thank you, Alara. I won't let you down." As the two of them walked down the corridor, Mark felt a surge of confidence. The trials would be his final test, the moment that would determine his future on Veldoria. But for the first time since arriving, he felt like he was truly ready. The air was thick with anticipation as Mark stood at the entrance of the arena, his heart pounding in his chest. The sun had just risen, casting long shadows across the Veldorian training grounds. Today was the day he would face the Veldorian trials. His final test to prove that he was worthy of trust. Alara stood beside him, her presence a quiet reassurance in the midst of his growing nerves. "You've trained hard for this," Alara said softly, her voice steady. "I know you can do it." Mark nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at him. The trials were not something to be taken lightly. It wasn't just a physical test, it was a test of his very soul. His ability to control the power that ran through him. If he failed, the consequences could be more than just personal. He could lose everything. The crowd gathered in the stands, their eyes fixed on Mark. The Veldorians had always been a proud and powerful species, and their trials were legendary. Mark had heard the stories only the strongest, the most determined, could survive them. The arena stretched before him, a massive circle surrounded by towering stone walls. In the center was a pit, its floor marked with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. Mark couldn't help but feel that the arena itself was alive, watching him. A Veldorian elder stood in the center of the arena, his voice booming. "Across the grounds, Mark, human of Earth, you stand before us as one who has taken the blood of our people. The trials you face will prove your worth, your strength, and your control. You must succeed or face the consequences of failure." Mark felt the weight of the elder's words settle over him. There was no turning back now. The elder raised his hand, and the ground beneath Mark's feet rumbled. Suddenly, the arena floor cracked open, and from the depths, a large creature emerged. It was like nothing Mark had ever seen. Its body was covered in scales, its eyes glowing with a fierce light. It roared, shaking the air with its power, and lunged toward Mark with terrifying speed. Mark's instincts kicked in. He stepped back, raising his hands to defend himself, but the creature was too fast. It struck with a swipe of its massive claws, knocking Mark off his feet. He hit the ground hard. The air knocked out of him, but he quickly scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. Alara's voice rang in his ears. "Focus, Mark. You've trained for this. Control the power within you." Mark took a deep breath, remembering everything Alara had taught him. The energy inside him was still there, pulsing with life. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the power flow through him. He reached out with his mind, feeling the energy around him, feeling the creature's movements as if they were his own. When he opened his eyes, the creature lunged again, but this time Mark was ready. He raised his hand, and the ground beneath the creature's feet shifted, sending it off balance. The creature howled in surprise, but Mark didn't hesitate. He focused all his energy into one strong burst, pushing the creature back. The creature staggered, but it wasn't defeated. It recovered quickly and charged once more. Mark knew he had to do something different, something that would end the fight. He had to control the energy completely, no more holding back. With a determined look, Mark stepped forward, his arms raised. The creature lunged, but this time Mark was quicker. He concentrated, and the ground cracked open beneath the creature's feet. Roots of Veldorian trees shot up, wrapping around its legs, holding it in place. The creature struggled, but Mark's control was firm. He pulled the energy, guiding it, using the environment around him to trap the creature. Finally, the creature was still, its strength no match for Mark's newfound control. He released his hold on the energy, and the arena fell silent. Mark stood, breathing heavily, his muscles aching from the effort. The crowd, once tense, now erupted in applause. Alara stepped forward, her eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Mark. You controlled the power. You passed the trials." Mark smiled, exhaustion filling his body. He had done it. He had faced the creature and controlled the energy inside him. But as the crowd cheered, Mark knew this victory wasn't just about strength. It was about proving to the Veldorians and to himself that he could rise above fear and doubt, that he could be trusted. The elder who had spoken earlier stepped forward, his expression inscrutable. "Mark, human of Earth, you have passed the trials. You have shown your strength, your control, and your resolve. You are no longer just a symbol of change. You are a true ally to the Veldorians." Mark's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and relief. The weight that had pressed down on him since his arrival had lifted. He wasn't just the human who drank the Veldorian blood, he was a part of their future. Alara smiled at him, her eyes shining with admiration. You did it, Mark. This is just the beginning. Mark nodded, but deep down, he knew this was more than just a test. It was a step towards something greater, future where humans and Veldorians could work together, side by side. The trials had been a test of power, yes, but they were also a test of trust, and Mark had earned it. As Mark looked around at the cheering crowd, he knew that his journey was far from over. But today, he had taken the first step toward a new beginning. A beginning where both species could come together, not as enemies, but as allies.